So in today's episode, I'm just kind of be showing pictures and stuff because this is something that's coming to me while I'm getting ready to go to the grocery store. So I don't want to lose the thought or the idea or train of thought or anything like that. If you know how creative works, you know, if you sit down and put a camera in front of you, it's probably not going to come out the same way. But anyway, so in today's episode of the Ascension to Confidence podcast, I want to talk about how the promises that we make to ourselves can become our North Star. The promises you make to yourself and the intentionality behind each promise and you keeping it will change your life. So there are some fundamentals that I've established for myself that I genuinely feel like have really shaped who I am as a person, because I was able to take an honest look at an honest listen first to what the people closest to me were saying about me, and an honest look at myself, because I had to make sure that I could trust the source. And even if you can't really trust the source, like if it's a person who you feel as though is manipulative and maybe they're not the most honest themselves, you have to take what they say with a grain of salt, but you have to also factor in if this is a similar experience of people who have known you in shorter amounts of time. And if that's consistent, then I don't think you should just write off what they're saying because they're not the person you want to hear it from. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about things like when people are pretty much giving you a review of your character or their experience with you. It's when they're holding you accountable, when they're telling you how you made them feel. And if there are a few things that you are consistently hearing, now, it gets so freaking tricky because, like I said, you do have to be able to trust the source, but at the same time, you have to be able to trust yourself, and you have to be honest. Like, it is like radical honesty, with yourself about, okay, wait, how did I feel after that interaction? Did I feel like I made the right decision, or did I just want to be right? Because there is a difference. And there's a difference in how you feel in the interaction afterwards, especially if it's people you want to keep in your life. One of the promises that I made to myself came after a conversation that I had with my daughters, where I asked them, I said, do you feel like when you bring something to me that you can trust that things will be handled? Like, do you, essentially asking them, do you trust do you trust my word? Do I follow through with what I say I'm going to do? And they didn't specifically say no, but they didn't specifically say yes either. And I was like, that's a problem. I wrote that, and not a problem that they said it, but a problem that it could be said. I didn't like that. I didn't like that the two people in the world who have to depend on me for everything couldn't confidently say that I do what I say I'm going to do. I didn't like that. And I'm like, well, what can I do to change that? And I was like, you have to be honest about where you're at and what you're capable of doing, and don't make promises outside of that. You control the controllables. I didn't have language for that then, but I told myself, if you feel as though it's too big for you to do, the first thing you need to start doing with your children is being transparent about what is going on and what could prevent you from providing what it is that they're asking for. Or if they want you to show up in a specific way and emotionally you can't, you need to be transparent with your children and tell them what's going on inside of you so that they understand why you can't show up in a certain capacity, or why you can't play in that moment, or what's going on with you health-wise, what's going on with you financially. Because a lot of people say you have to protect your children from what's really going on. And while I hear that, and I agree with that to a certain degree, I think in the day-to-day, we should definitely be practicing more transparency with our children. So I wrote down in my journal, you need to do what you say you're going to do. And if you know that you can't do something, don't say that you will. Say you are unsure, but that you will try, and you have to actually make an effort. And I remember writing that in my journal in 2018. And I asked my daughters that same question a few weeks ago, and they, without a shadow of a doubt, said, absolutely. That's the progress that I was looking for. Like, okay, boom. I said I'm going to do it, and I did it. That's all I need to know. And me keeping that promise to them, a byproduct of that was me just becoming that type of person in general. Now, that doesn't mean that I am perfect at that, what I said I wanted to do. At the same time, I make it my business to make every to make every attempt possible with whatever resources are at my disposal to do exactly what I said I was going to do. Another thing that I promised myself when I was a little girl and I was being abused by my mom, I promised myself that I would never forget what it felt like to be a child. And I said, I don't care how old I get. I don't care how boring life gets. I don't care how serious life gets. I will never forget this feeling of what it feels like to be a child. And all throughout, I probably was like 12 or 13 when I said that, probably even younger, but I do think it stuck with me from around 12 to 13. And I said, if I ever have kids, I'm going to always remember what it felt like to be this age or just a kid. And at every age, it's like I made an intentional, conscious effort to sit with my feelings and ask myself, what are you feeling right now, even as a teenager? Mind you, I became a mom at 17 years old. Okay? I had my baby when I was 17, and I had no idea of what I was doing, but I knew I was going to keep that promise. And I also learned from a younger age and watching adults break up all the time, watching them leave people, and kind of examining the circumstances that led to the breakups. I was like, I don't know what this is. And I started Googling words, and the word that I landed on was pride. Pride was what was at the core for ruining all of these relationships. And I thought to myself, okay, so how do I know my pride is showing up? And that's when I understood that your pride shows up when you are unwilling to accept the part that you play in the fall of something. And pride, you not managing your pride, you not being aware of your pride will keep you from keeping people who love you around you. Pride will keep you from certain opportunities. Pride will keep you from reaching your highest potential. And at every turn, I always knew I always want to be ever changing, not in a way to where it is counterintuitive or counterproductive to my evolution as a person, but to where it is I am always examining a situation, gathering new information, and learning how to apply that information. And then I had a friend. We're not friends anymore, but every relationship offers you something. In this relationship, I noticed that she was very good at picking up the pace, or like her turnaround time for failure was very fast. And after getting over my pride, I was like, you know what? She's right about this. I need to have a little bit more haste. Yeah, it hurt. Yeah, it's hard. Yeah, I don't know what I'm doing. But you got to learn how to apply that a little bit faster, because life is short. And we have a finite amount of time that we are here on this earth, to where whatever day you die, you want to be able to feel like at every turn you did your best and you were your most truest version of yourself, and that even if your life stopped in the middle of the evolution, you were still evolving. You were still capable of love. You were still capable of growth. At least that's how I feel about it. So I never wanted to be a prisoner to any old ideals, even as a parent, even as a partner, even as a worker, even in no capacity. It's just something about that makes my soul feel so uncomfortable. So when I was telling myself that I never wanted to forget what it felt like to be a kid, even actively while raising my daughter, not knowing what the hell I was doing, I was assessing myself by putting myself in her shoes, and I parented her from that perspective. So it's like I kept my childlike mind, and I say her because at that time she was the only child that I had. And I also learned when I had my second baby that my trauma played a lot into how I raised my first one. So while I'm actively correcting all of the mistakes I made with my first child by doing better with my second child, I was having to undo stuff actively. And I still am. I'm still teaching my oldest daughter about how it's not her responsibility to fill in the gaps for anything that I need to be doing. It's not her responsibility to overstep or overshow up or just pretty much be like the eldest daughter. I make sure that I let her know you are not selfish for choosing yourself. I do not expect you to do X, Y, and Z. Because her birthright is her autonomy. Her birthright is her freedom. Same thing with my second daughter. I made sure that even with them being creative, that I I just left them alone. Not left them alone as in I did not rear them, as in I did not correct them. I learned how to talk to my children. I learned how to respect my children as human beings first, not as my children, because outside of them coming out of my womb, they belong to themselves. And I think that so many people struggle with that when it comes to parenting, because we want to control the outcome, because we have our personal identities wrapped up into who our children become. And I think that that comes from a place of deep insecurity, of like projection, of just this, it's such a scary type of control that I just had to learn to relinquish and accept that whatever decisions my children make, I can confidently say they made all of those decisions of their own merit. And the only part I played in it was like being a compass for, well, this is what happens if you make this decision. This is what happened to me when I made these decisions. And this is what happened to all the people who made the decisions you're contemplating. And I told my oldest daughter a few weeks ago, I said to her, why don't you surprise me and do something different so you can give me some new data? Because I know the old data is just spinning in my head. Why don't you be different? Be different. Go give us something else to figure out. Give us some new numbers to work. We already know all that old shit. We all know that. Why don't you take what I'm giving you and run off into the sunset with it? Give me a new perspective. And she looked at me like, I will. I said, I would love to see that. Give me something else to show me what it's like to see within my own bloodline somebody run off on a plug. Show me. Be free. Be completely free. Do whatever you want. And then report back and tell me all about it. I need to hear this shit. I need to hear it from the horse's mouth. I need to see it. Send me the pictures. Send me the pictures. As a matter of fact, send me the motherfucking bill. Send me the bill. And I think that when I think about the type of mother, the type of partner, the type of employee, the type of person to myself and to anybody close to me that I try to be, it's based off of those fundamentals. And if I hadn't learned how to first even live in a way that would put me in experiences to have my mind shaped like that. You can't never be afraid to make friends with any and everybody. That's another fundamental of mine. I will make friends with anybody. I am not, I don't want to be friends with no white people. I don't want to be friends with, no. I don't want to be friends with ignorant people, period. I don't want to be friends with people who are racist. And in order for me to get to that point, I had to stop and I had to acknowledge my own prejudices, because I did have them and they did come from an ignorant place. But I've learned that the more open-minded you are, the more open your heart is, the more transparent you are, the more vulnerable you are, the more authentic you can be in every facet of your life. And that in itself generates such a high return of wealth, of knowledge, of wisdom, of love, of confidence, because, and I'm saying confidence because this is the Ascension of Confidence podcast, but come on now, you understand what it is. The whole purpose is for you to create fundamentals that help you feel confident enough to reach whatever it is you want to do. But you have to understand the laws of the land when you do that, because if you don't, it could create situations that make you feel like your dreams are not for you. What do I mean? You see Frank Lucas and you say, I want to be the biggest deep boy ever. Pause. Do you want to be the biggest D-boy ever? Or do you want the power, the positioning, the respect, the connections, the admiration that Frank Lucas had? Because there are other ways to get that. And it is going to require you to, especially if you want to be free. Hello, the clink is a real place and they calling it sweat equity now. Let's not be stupid. If you want those things, you have to be honest with yourself about what it is that you are truly after when you see someone else's life and you're like, I want that. What about that do you want? What is it that you genuinely want? I want the bags. I want the, okay, what about the bags? Is it what it feels like to have that experience? Is it how people look at you when they see you with that thing? Is it the way you can be perceived? Do you want to change how people perceive you? Read a book. Intelligence gonna do it every time, babes. I'm telling you. And intelligence is one of those things. A bag, anybody could put that damn bag on. Anybody could. If you work hard enough, you can be at McDonald's living with your mother. And ain't nothing wrong with working at McDonald's. Ain't nothing wrong with living with your mama. Ain't nothing wrong with nothing I'm about to say. But what I'm saying is, when I first realized, I think I talked about this before on here. A few years ago, there was this guy who worked at this coffee shop. Oh my God, he was so fun to me. He had a Gap. He was artistic. You know, like, it is something about a man who is like a creative man who has a fucking Gap. Oh, I'm not. I just won't be released from the shackles of that man. Like, oh my God. Even though I'm single right now, I'm definitely released from the shackles. But you know what I mean? Like, it's going to always be my soft spot right between my... Anyway, so he was working in a coffee shop. And he looked at me. And he was just like, you are so beautiful. I was like, thank you. I was like, I came in here to talk to you, actually. Yes, I'm one of those, argue with your mama. And he was like, oh, you did? I was like, yeah, I come here all the time and I see you. And I was like, you know what? You've kind of like flirted with me a little bit, but I know you're at work and I see that you're not really working today. So I just wondered, like, you know, what's up? And he said, oh, well, come on, let's sit down. So we had a chat. He asked me a couple questions about myself. He asked me if I had kids. I said, yeah. He said, you're absolutely beautiful, but I really don't want to be with someone who has kids. If you didn't have kids, I would be so into this, but I just know that my person doesn't have kids. And I said, you know, I respect that. And he looked at me and he said, plus, you look like really bougie. And I was like, what do you mean? He said, you probably work at LA Fitness or something like that. I was like, that's bougie to you? Mind you, to me, LA Fitness is like on the lower level of gyms. Like, it's very, very low down there. It's really not that expensive. I know that because I've been going to LA Fitness for probably like 15 years by now. And he was like, yeah, it's a really expensive gym, right? It's probably like $110 a month. I looked at him and I said, you know, a few years ago, I wanted to dye my hair. I wanted to dye it like this ash blonde color. And the person who was making the video was this person I really admire. And she had like a lot of really expensive things. And I thought to myself, oh, I'm not even going to look up what she's using because I know that stuff probably so expensive. I said, and then one day I went to the hair store, and as I was buying other things, I saw the very thing she was using, and I was like, what? The stuff was only $4. And I was like, the LA Fitness membership is only $40. And he was like, what? I said, yeah, don't ever price yourself out of anything because you just assume it's out of reach for you. Actually look up the things that you're interested in to see how much it costs, because you could be keeping yourself from a really good experience. And he looked at me, and he was like, I like you. Then he followed me on Instagram and we exchanged a couple of things, and that was that. Moral of the story is, if you are looking at a bag, hoping, or anything, any part of these people's lives, and you're looking at their lives and you're like, oh, I want their life, if it's a thing, you have to understand that all things are accessible with the right amount of money or connections. And if you want that thing bad enough, I'm telling you, like I know what I know, you're going to have it. It's just a thing. It is just a thing. It is just an object. There is nothing that you can't have. But there are some things that you can't fake. Okay? How you have consistently treated people, you can't fake that. How you have consistently impacted the people around you, you can't fake that. What you know and who you genuinely are, you can't fake that and you can't buy it. So if there's anything that I want to influence y'all to take from this episode, because it's very short episode today, is when it comes to who you want to be, you need to ask yourself, at my core, what is it that I want my life to say for itself when I'm dead and gone? And what can I do every day to show up as that person? What are my fundamentals? And how do I begin to implement that every single day? If your fundamentals are, I want to be an intelligent person, you're going to have to read. You're going to have to be very open-minded. You're going to have to be naturally inquisitive. You cannot look at people and be like, oh, they're this type of person. You're not going to be the person you want to be thinking like that. You're not going to be in the rooms that you want to be in thinking like that. It's just not going to happen. That's not even me being a Debbie Downer. I'm telling you what I know, what I've seen. Anybody that I know who has ever thought in that capacity, they have reached their ceiling, and we're only 35. And I'm saying only because I do see that as very young in this whole grand scheme of life. That is very young. To have reached your ceiling, that saddens me. That deeply saddens me. If you know you want to be impactful, if you know you want to be loving, you're going to have to be able to receive it. You're going to have to be able to trust it. And that comes from understanding what it actually looks like. You have to confront the times in which maybe you didn't know what it looked like. Maybe you pushed it away when it was for you. And you have to be able to take in that information and learn from it very quickly and apply it even faster. And if you are actively making mistakes, you got to catch it in real time. I remember I was dating this guy. And during the breakup, the outro conversation, he said to me, you are absolutely beautiful and you are so smart. And when you were telling me things about myself, you were right about everything you said to me. And if I could just grow up and get it together and just be with you in a few years, I would marry you and I would do those things. But you want me to be a good person. You want to hold me accountable. And I don't want to do that right now. Now, that was some very honest stuff that man was saying to me. And at that time, I was like, oh my God, who was I in a relationship with? Because he was essentially admitting to gaslighting me the entire relationship and being, and like intentionally withholding affection and the progression of the relationship because he wanted me to be his slave. And that was exactly what he said to me. He wanted me to be his slave. And the resistance or the arguments all came because I was aware, but I just couldn't believe it, right? And when he said that to me, I had to accept it in that moment that I had tried too hard for the wrong person. I had stayed too long in the wrong relationship. I had given too much to somebody who was porous, who intentionally was rejecting all of my efforts to love them. And I had to sit with that. And I had to think, who was I okay with being in order to be in this relationship? And how can I make sure that if I move forward, I understand that there's nothing wrong with loving somebody. There's nothing wrong with being understanding. There's nothing wrong with being patient. But when all your goodness and all your love is consistently being thrown in your face, there's something wrong with you if you stay in there. And you got to be able to that's the accountability that you should be taking. Not for what they did, but for what you allowed. But for who you were okay with being in order to stay there and what that actually says. Because when I broke it down, I realized what that says is he's more deserving of my love than I am of love, period. Because ain't none here. And I am willing to stay in a relationship with someone who is bartering with me on my self-worth. That's insane. And I say it. I was humiliated. I was having like outer body experiences. I was experiencing a type of rage that I've never, and to this day, well, I've only experienced it one more time, but that was because I confronted my abusive mom. We'll talk about that in another episode. One other time outside of that relationship, you cannot be with people who do things like that, who move in that way. You have to quickly extract yourself and be like, you know what? What is for me is for me. And I'm not going to have to haggle on certain things when it comes to who I'm allowing to say they love me, who I'm allowing inside of my body, who I'm allowing inside of my family dynamics. Because a lot of times when you stay too long, it's because you're afraid that essentially you're going to miss all the blessings that come with being patient with this person. But a person who is worth that type of patience would never test it like that. They would never test you like that. That's not a fallacy. That is the truth. Because you are not doing that. And if you exist, there is someone who has that same mind frame who, if y'all work hard enough, and I say work hard enough because you got to get over your ego. You got to get over your past hurts. You got to be able to tell people what you need and how you want to show, not how you want to show up, but how you need them to show up for you. Those are the things that you will have to learn how to do in a relationship if you want it to work. It's not just going to be this seamless, easy, effortless, no, we just telepathically know everything. It ain't going to be like that, baby. It's not. And sometimes you might even fight with it if you want to try this hard. But if they're worth it, you will know, and that will be the easy part, the knowing, which will make the showing up even easier. But anyway, I'm rambling now. But let me go ahead and finish, get ready, because I said I was going to be getting ready, and about 30 minutes done went by and I ain't got ready yet. But if you really enjoyed this episode of the Ascension podcast episode, please let me know down in the comments and share some of your stories. Not even your stories, but in the comments, I want you all to think of 5 fundamentals that you can develop for yourself to better to prepare yourself to show up how you want to show up so you can get the things out of life that you actually want. Let's have a party in the comments, y'all. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode, and I will see you in the next one. Bye. Oh, wait. Also, let me know if y'all like this format better, because y'all can play this while you in the car and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, maybe y'all don't need to see me. Just let me know. All right, bye.